Representative Thaddeus McCotter joins us now to continue our conversation. What's next after the president has vetoed this bill?
I think what's going to happen next is anybody's guess. As we heard earlier from Bob, the Democratic Party has a serious rift within them. The left wing of the Democratic Party, which wants to end the war, has the opportunity to do so. In fact, it's a case where if the Democratic Party decides to do nothing in the wake of the veto, the war will grind to a halt, America will have to leave, and we will lose. The other wing of the Democratic Party that still wants to see America win has to determine how they can get enough votes to keep their conference together and then bring forward a supplemental plan that both they and Republicans can sign.
Are Republicans united behind the president and his strategy?
Yeah, far more than the Democratic Party. We've had about 15 or so individuals who, their dictates of conscience have told them that we cannot, at this point, continue the effort. And we accept that. We are a party large enough to include that. But in the end, the rift in the Democratic Party is huge. They control the Congress. If Nancy Pelosi wants to honor their implied campaign promise, or Harry Reid, who believes that the war is lost, want to do what I would assume logic and conscience would dictate, there should be no further supplemental bill sent to the president.
The newspapers this morning reporting that the polls show Republican support is starting to erode. What's your response to that?
My response is the same as probably Harry Truman's was. We're doing the right thing there. We have to continue and we have to win. A defeat for America will not be a defeat without consequence. We all want our troops home, but we also want to make sure that the stability of the world and the security of the United States is ensured. And if we leave precipitously, if we leave something worse behind us, one day there's a chance, A, that they will come here, or B, that we will have to go back. At this point in time, we have one more thing to do in Iraq. They are free, they are sovereign, they are independent, they have a duly elected government that is standing beside our soldiers fighting terrorism. What we have to do now is ensure they have a chance for survival in the absence of coalition forces. This is why this fighting is so ferocious, so fierce. We are down to the last thing we have to do.
We want to invite our viewers to participate in this conversation. If you have a question or comment for Representative McCotter, you can start dialing in now. Democrats 202-737-0002, Republicans 202-737-0001, Independents 202-628-0205. We'll get to your phone calls in just a minute. But where will Republicans and Democrats compromise, if at all?
We have to see what the majority party wants to try to put forward. The Republican Party's position is pretty clear, as a vast majority of us believe that we have to accomplish this last goal and leave Iraq better than we found it, make it stable, secure, ensure that it is not a haven for terrorists in the future. What the Democratic Party's position on this is anything's guess. I think a lot of Americans are tired of the euphemisms and trying to read the tea leaves of what the change of course actually is. I think we're finding out. Generally, in the last campaign, we saw people say that we need a change of direction in Iraq, we're stalemated. Now, generally, if you're in a stalemate, you can do one of two things. You can move forward, you can move backward. When someone says to the American people, in a military stalemate, we'd like to see the United States military change direction, they generally assume they'd like to go forward and win. That's not what we're finding out now. So my concern at the present time is, how do you reconcile the expressions of the Democratic Party leadership that the war is lost, that we have to leave? If you look at what they sent to the president yesterday, they had two timelines in there. The first one said that if we're losing, we leave by July. The second one said if we're winning, we leave by October. I don't know how that is a rational basis for policy. I don't know how anybody can take a compromised position with something that is so inherently irrational that even if the United States is winning at a given point in time, we arbitrarily start to leave and lose.
So if Democrats were to drop those timelines but keep in the legislation benchmarks, would you support that?
Well, benchmarks are, as long as they're dictated by the circumstances on the ground and not an artificial timeline, it seems a rational matter of congressional oversight. In fact, our leader, Mr. Boehner, has worked up benchmarks that he has put into a bill. I think that that's sane. I think that that's the oversight responsibility of the Congress. In many ways, my own party did not exercise and was promptly sent into minority status for not doing so.
Our first call for Representative McCotter comes from Bethany, Ohio, on our line for Democrats. Good morning.
Good morning. How's it going this morning?
Doing well, sir. Go ahead.
I think that we should be out of Iraq because it's a continuously changing reason we're there. It started out as weapons of mass destruction and then freedom so they can vote for their own government. And it's really disturbing for me that America is living with, that Bush made Saddam Hussein very prophetic in his words that America went into Baghdad, that the streets run red with American blood. And it's just disturbing that that's what is exactly happening right now.
But he has a very valid point, and I think it's been a source of frustration and consternation for both the American people and members that they send to Congress. The president has set a changing goal for victory in Iraq. The goal for victory in Iraq, I think, that should have been articulated earlier and really is what we're down to now, is what I said. You have a free, independent, sovereign Iraq, a duly elected government, and we have to make sure that they're not aligned with terror anymore. We've accomplished that, and now we're down to give them a chance to survive. And I emphasize chance to survive. The chance to survive is something even the United States can only guarantee. We can't guarantee ourselves that we'll continue as a free republic. Benjamin Franklin told us, we'll give you a republic if you can keep it. We have to say the same thing to the Iraqis. At this point in time, the benchmarks that you mentioned earlier and what the caller's talking about, I think we have to focus on is this is the last thing that we have to do as a matter of obligation to the Iraqi people. We've given them their emancipation, we've given them their chance to survive, and the benchmarks will show us whether or not they can survive in the absence of U.S. troops. Now, this is not to say that we can stop every bomb that goes off in Baghdad, every incident of violence. We can't even guarantee that here. But we can try to help make sure that the organized opposition that could overthrow that government in our absence has been diminished to the point they no longer threaten it, and the Iraqis are empowered to the point at which they can defend themselves.
How long will that take?
That will be determined by facts on the ground. It's a counterinsurgency. I remember saying in 2003 that this war had gone into a counterinsurgency mode. Unfortunately, that was not heeded. And counterinsurgencies are very difficult for a free people, which the United States are, because they are time intensive. Now, I will say this. There are a lot of Republicans who may think that the public support for this is eroding and they get frustrated. I think the American people have been incredibly patient with the administration and with this war effort. And I would hate to see that patience and that steadfast support to win now be lost.
Our next call comes from Huntington, Pennsylvania. Good morning.
Yes, good morning. Thank you for C-SPAN. Representative, I have a serious question for you. Have you ever heard the name April Glaspie?
Yes.
Okay, she's the one that told King George I that he could have Kuwait. That sent by King George I to tell Saddam Hussein he could have Kuwait. Now, I remember the day that the Supreme Court handed the election to Bush II. I made a comment to a gentleman I work with. I can guarantee you will see the movie Osama bin Laden Goes to Washington. Just for the simple fact of what Bush I did to Osama bin Laden when he was in Afghanistan, when we were fighting the Russians. And Bush put him there. And who put Saddam Hussein in power but Bush I? Now, if you could impeach Bill Clinton for oral sex, surely you can hang George Bush from the highest tree in the land for what he's done.
Your response?
My response is, given the royal epitaph that he puts on to the president and his father, I suggest that he rent the madness of King George III.